So my name is Kevin Kinsley. I'm a produce manager with Hy-Vee, here with you today with one of our great local growers, Scott Trump from Trump's Orchard in Faribault. We wanted to get you guys out and see some of the people that we buy local produce from here in southeast Minnesota and Minnesota in general. So Scott, why don't you tell us where we're at and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So thank you for having us, by the way. Hy-Vee does a great job for us. We really like partnering with Hy-Vee. We are about 40 miles south of the Twin Cities Metro on I-35 in the heart of farm country. This is one of our orchards that we're standing in right now. As you might be able to hear, there's crews working around us. And we have a few Honeycrisp trees behind us just that they're working through. This is one of our orchards. My grandpa planted our first apple trees in 1954. My mom and dad still work here. My grandpa unfortunately is gone now, but my mom and dad are here, my wife and I, and our two boys and daughter also help out at the orchard whenever they can.
So that's pretty cool, third generation grower.
Yes.
In 1954, that's quite a long time to be in business. You've probably seen everything evolve over the years. Started probably in the business running around when you were a kid.
A lot has changed. My grandpa started, when he first started, we had a little orchard in town, and he sold apples out of his garage. He'd park the cars outside during apple season and sell apples out of the garage. So in the early 90s, we built a warehouse facility, a packing facility with big coolers, and at that time we had a hard time finding apples to fill that facility, and now it's bursting at the seams. So we're lucky that he had the foresight and the vision to see where the business could go someday, and hopefully he's proud of where it's at. I know that we're happy with where we're at. We work hard year round here to make sure that we have good products for Hy-Vee.
Yeah, I stopped in the other day and you had like you and your wife and your dad stopped in, and it was like people just kept stopping in. Yeah. It's like a kind of a hub of the community, it seems.
It is. There's a lot that happens here, and you know, the people that work for us and work with us have been here a long time, and that was something that my grandpa always preached. You take care of your help, you take care of the people that help you, you make sure that you're a valuable part of the community, and you do business the right way. And that's what we really, I say those words to myself every day. I want to make sure that we're doing things the right way.
That's really cool. A lot of the same values I think that you guys have at your orchard here align with our business in Hy-Vee, and it seems to have been a good partnership. You said that you have multiple orchards, so we're standing in this orchard. You said it's about 40 acres?
Roughly, yeah, 35, 40 acres of apple trees.
And then how many orchards and acres roughly do you have in total?
So we have 4 different orchards, and the total acreage is somewhere between 75, 80-ish acres of apple trees. It depends from year to year. We, with apple trees, a lot of it's out with the old and in with the new. So there's transition periods where 4 or 5 acres might not be in production for a few years, but that's part of it. That's just how apple trees work for us. This is how it's worked for us over the years. So,
and we're always seeing new varieties in the store, and that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Get rid of some of the old varieties that aren't selling, find the new varieties that people want, or and it's kind of trial by error, some of it, right?
That's the key. That's the golden ticket, right? Find the next new thing, the next big apple, the next thing that people look forward to all summer long and can't wait to get their hands on in a Hy-Vee store. The last couple of years, it's been the first Kiss apple. It's the new U of M variety that was developed, and I mean, we have thousands of trees, and just about all the Hy-Vee stores in Minnesota had our first Kiss apples in them. And I think from the feedback that I've gotten, all the stores wish they could get more, and we're unfortunately sold out for the year. So I mean, that's like a great sign.
You said more trees on the way next year, right?
Yeah, more first Kiss trees going in the ground to make sure that as many customers and as many families that want to get those apples have access to them. Yeah.
The only problem is we all have to be patient, right? Because how long does it take from when you plant that tree to when you're going to get some real production that you can take?
3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years. We'll get a little bit after the 3rd and 4th year, but not significant amount of apples.
Yep.
5 years, and you start to see a crop that's saleable. That's always our goal.
And then these trees behind us here, we can see they're flush with apples. They've maybe, you said, possibly been picked through once a little bit?
Yep. Oh yeah, they've been picked once. They're just waiting for a little bit of color, a little bit more finish, and they'll come back and they'll get the rest of these apples in the next 7 days, probably 5 to 7 days.
And how old are these trees here?
These trees are pretty old. So these trees are probably 15, 16 years old. They've been here a while. They're part of a block that was here from when we first took over this little tract of land. So it's been here a while.
And then everything, as we've seen today so far, everything's picked by hand. with small picking groups, right? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so that's the key for us. We have, I think, 3 picking crews right now that are working in various places around the orchard. Each crew has a supervisor or a manager who's in charge of that tractor and that crew. They get put in an area, and they work in that area until their shifts are over or their time in the orchard is over. And I think that's a key for us, because we don't have 25, 30 people picking on one block of trees. I think it allows the pickers to work at a good pace, but not a furious pace where you're damaging fruit and trees and equipment and everything else. So this is a system that we sort of use here. It's probably pretty unique to us. I mean, it works for us. That's why we go with it.
Then when you're not pushing them on at an extreme rate, like you said, equipment, they're taking care of themselves, their bodies, and I mean, you need these guys. When do you start picking? Like, give people an idea of when the picker is going to start picking the first variety of apples, and then maybe when you're going to finish, and how long that picker's season is.
Sure. Just like anything in farming, Mother Nature's in control of everything. But generally speaking, our picking crews start around the 10th of August. Okay. So it's the dog days of summer. They're working in the heat. And maybe not 3 or 4 crews at that time of year, but our main crews will be back at about that time.
And what are they picking in, like the first
of August? So the first kiss this year, I believe we started to pick on the 19th, and we have a few older varieties. We grow like 19 or 20 different varieties of apples here, and there's still a few of those varieties that we grow for customers that have been buying them for 40, 50 years that are ripe end of July, first part of August. So there's work to do. There's preparations that happen in that time of year also. But there are some earlier varieties that we start with. And then, like I said, once you start picking the first kiss, then the next variety is the Zestar and the Sweet Tangos and the Honeycrisp. Everything seems to fall in line after that. And one of the things that we've tried to do over the years is to extend our season on the front side and the back side. It used to be that the thought was apple season was September and going into October, and it would fizzle out. And with the earlier apples now, we're trying to train and get people to realize that there's some high quality apples available in the middle of August, honestly. And our picking crews will be here till November 15th, I suppose, right before Thanksgiving. As long as the cold weather holds off long enough. I think our last variety that we pick is another brand new variety called Evercrisp, and I think it's going to be a fantastic apple someday too. It's just we don't have huge numbers of it yet, but I know quite a few Hy-Vee stores got a lot of those last year, and we did a little bit of testing with them, and everybody seemed to be very happy with them. So again, trying to extend our season front side and back side to give us a longer footprint in the stores.
Right. So as we know, a lot of the apples come from Washington State, right? They grow a huge amount of apples. Here in Minnesota, we like to think of ourselves as an apple state. Kind of tell the people what, we can both kind of talk about this, but what the difference is in buying a Minnesota apple and then buying a Washington apple. Sure.
So you'll obviously know more about this as buying Washington apples. I've never bought a Washington apple. You're right, Washington's the king of apples. I mean, the bushels, acreage, trees, however you want to look at it, that's where the bulk of our apples are grown in the U.S. and for domestic purposes and for export. So, but I don't really want to say Minnesota apples are a niche market, but we're such a small window in the overall season, the overall apple season, that I think apples that have been developed here, like at the university, they were developed here for a reason. They were tested here over the years, and I think, in my opinion, those apples that were tested and developed here were meant to grow here. The flavor profiles that you get here are the way that they were supposed to be. And when you take those trees, whatever variety, it doesn't matter to me what variety, you take those trees and you plant them somewhere else, it changes a lot of different characteristics of that apple, whether it be texture, color, storability, all those things. They weren't tested at other environmental locations. So I think that we have a definite advantage in the fact that the apples that we grow were developed and tested here over time with people who understand and love apples. And luckily our customer base, our client base at the store level, at our store level, look forward to those varieties every year. I can't tell you how many phone calls we get every single day asking when this variety is ready, when this variety is going to be ready, when can I come get this variety. I mean, I don't know if that's unique to this part of the country, But I feel like it's definitely something that we take advantage of because people really, really look forward to Minnesota apples.
They know, like you were saying, it's a season, right? It's kind of the apple season, and it's a couple months.
Exactly.
And just on like the flavor profiles you were talking about, I agree with that. We got a ton of different, they grow apples in Washington that we don't grow here at all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, plenty of apples that people have tried growing in Minnesota that they grow in Washington, and that kind of goes south real fast. But it seems like you were saying, the Honeycrisp and certain varieties like that, it's, in my opinion, the taste is the best when they come from Minnesota. Right. And then I want to touch on the point of, Rochester, in my location, or the Twin Cities, if we get your apples, how soon, like if these guys are picking this apple today, when will that apple be in a store?
These apples that they're picking today, chances are going to be in a grocery store Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
For reference. And that's not to say, so when we start a variety, and I think we just went over this a little bit, when we start a variety, it's not uncommon for me to pick an apple on a Tuesday, and I'm standing in a store with a pallet jack of that apple on a Tuesday. I mean, that's just how fast the turnover is. That's sort of the old school way that we pack apples. I don't wait for us to have 10,000 cases of an apple in a cooler before I start to ship it. Right. If I have apples available for sale, then they're being shipped out for consumers. That's the way we keep things fresh. And I can't speak to how soon an apple out of Washington ends up in a grocery store after it's been picked, but I have to believe it's more in that 2 to 4 week range from harvest.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is this apple comes off a tree, and within a couple, 2 to 5, 6 days, it's in our store, and it's in the hands of the customer with, in my opinion, a better eating experience. Right. Because it's fresher. If you get it across the country, they got to do all the same things that you guys have to do with putting it through a line and washing it and packing it. Yep. And then it's got to sit on a semi and come across the U.S. and, burn a bunch of diesel fuel, which
probably go to a warehouse to be distributed back onto another semi. Yep.
So it's just a lot fresher product for a customer. Quicker to store. I think, the whole push has been local, buy local, support local. I think Hy-Vee's done a good job finding people like yourself and other vendors and bringing it to our stores so that our customers don't necessarily always have to go to an orchard.
Hy-Vee's done a tremendous job from the supervisor level down to the store level. It's amazing how easy the process has been to fit in and be a part of Hy-Vee. That's what I think of working with a few other store and whatever. It's just hard sometimes, and Hy-Vee puts a huge value on local grown, and we've done a few things with them as far as marketing goes, and I feel like they're just as much involved on the local level as the farmers are. Yep. And that's what it should be. I think that's what consumers want. I think they want to have a connection to the fruit and the produce that they buy, and I think Hy-Vee does a great job of that.
Another thing I wanted to touch on, Scott, was this orchard. Obviously, you got all these acres, and today they're picking apples, and then you're processing apples and you're packing apples. We talked about that window being 3 months, 4 months. But what's the work like? Like, when does the work start and stop, if that is a thing, in an orchard, being a Minnesota apple grower?
Yep, no, that's a good question, and we get that question a lot, and sometimes it's just assumed that apple season is from September through Thanksgiving, and that's fine. That's when we're most visible. I always tell people I look forward to the end of apple season when I get to be by myself out in the field. That's what I enjoy, and we're pretty busy during pack season and when we're selling apples and those types of things, but the maintenance in an orchard is nonstop. Whether it's floor management, like managing the grass, simply is mowing the grass. If it rains every week, we got to mow the grass every week in 80 acres of orchard, and it's not like you just come out and mow grass. I mean, it's a process, and then managing the tree. So every single apple tree that we grow gets a haircut every single winter when the leaves fall off. So when we're done selling apples in the fall, so mid-December, we start pruning apple trees, and every single apple tree gets pruned for a couple different reasons. For light penetration, to help give the apples a nice color and a nice finish. For airflow, to help keep the apples dry as much as possible in the summer. And for ease of picking. You can't have like a head-shaped tree and expect apple crews to be able to pick the apples in that thing. So apple trees need to be pruned to be maintained a certain shape. for quality of apples and for ease of picking. So after the apple trees are pruned, then you have to take care of all those prunings that are in all the apple trees, and those things happen. And then we move on to blossom time just after that, and that's a big time for us, making sure that the bees that we use and the native bees and everything has access to trees. And
how does that work, the bees? Because there's a lot of people interested in that, and there's been a lot of talk about bees and pollinators and those type of things, right? So how many bees do you get and what time of year, and how does that?
That's a good question, and it varies a lot. So we use a couple of different kinds of bees. We have honey bees in all of our blocks of orchards for pollination. We also have bumblebee colonies that we bring in because they're a little more, they fly a little more when it's cold and damp, like it is sometimes during blossom time. And then it's Mother Nature, right? You gotta have a little bit of sunshine and a little bit and some nice days during bloom to have good pollination, but a lot of that has to do with environment and where your apple trees are located too, I think. So after blossom time, it's just normal maintenance. Every single day there's something to do. We plant trees in the spring right around the same time, so you're babysitting young trees. Next year I think I have about 1,000 little trees to plant, which isn't a huge number, but when it comes along with everything else that's happening in the orchard, it's a big job to make sure that everything is in a good place with water, with training and all the things that goes along with making sure a young tree has what it needs to be a productive tree someday.
And earlier we were just around the corner in the orchard, and you were pointing out a couple things on a tree, some integrated pest management. Why don't you talk about that a little bit and how important that is?
Sure. So back in the day, back when my grandpa started, spray programs were basically set on a calendar. Every 7 to 10 days, it was just drive up and down every row and put material on trees to protect the apples. We've come a long way since then. Some of it in varieties, because some varieties that we plant nowadays are less susceptible to a lot of the things that we dealt with years ago. And a lot of it has to do with our integrated pest management programs, where we monitor blocks of orchards for specific pests, and then we only treat those pests if they're present. We don't just put material out to put material out. So a lot of times when this past summer is a good example of that. It was drier, it was hot. We didn't have to use as much material as we would on a wet, damp year. So we monitor pests. If the pests aren't there, we don't put the material out.
And explain, there was 2 kinds of traps or 2 kinds of devices that you were using.
Yeah, there's even more than that. Those are just the ones that you saw. We use pheromone disruptors, which is it looks like a little sponge basically that gets hung around in the orchard, and it gives off a pheromone scent that confuses the insects, that they don't come into where that is. And we also use traps to manage and monitor the numbers of that bug that's in the trap. So one of the traps that we use that you were just looking at is a codling moth trap. It has a lure in it that attracts codling moths, which is a common apple pest. And then when we reach a certain threshold or a certain number of that bugs, then that block where that number is reached gets treated for that bug. So it may be that there's blocks that didn't get treated at all throughout the summer. It just depends on sometimes how the wind is blowing, or where they're coming from, or where there's a population of that bug based on where your orchard's at. So I think it's a little more responsible way to farm, a more sustainable way to farm, and I think it's better for everyone involved.
Yep. I think it's better for you as the person that has to apply material and pay for the material. It's better for the customer that wants product with the least amount of material on it, right? Yeah. It's better for everybody. Mm-hmm. So what else, if you wanted to send one message about your local product, people can come in and see, we try and put your name out there and your picture out there by your displays, but what is something that you would like the customer to know about your farm or your organization here in Faribault?
That's a good question. The biggest compliment we can get is when there's a rebuy at a store, right? Because the customer picked that product up and they came back to get it again. Yep. And that's what I look forward to every week. And the message is out there, I think, from us. It's local, it's homegrown, it's family owned. Everything that we do is old fashioned here. I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. What we do is the old way, and it's the way that I was taught. It's the only way we know. So some people might think we run in circles sometimes. That's fine. But what we do at the end of the day is move tens of thousands of pounds of apples to grocery stores and consumers, and everyone seems to be happy with where we're at with that. So I think to me that's the most important. If you have a piece of fruit in your hand and you take a bite out of it and you don't want the second bite, then we didn't do our job.
Right.
It's that simple. And you look in the snack aisles at grocery stores, and there's a million choices of things that people can have. And if an apple can be looked at as a snack, and a healthy snack, and a snack that has great flavor, texture, and the profile that you're craving more of, then I think we did a great job.
And that's how we get everyone to buy more, right? Is like have great apples and great product and great flavors. And that's why these new varieties and, you know, local grower partnerships are real important to our business. You know, it's like how to get somebody to eat an apple instead of a Twix bar,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
And it's better for you and your business, and it's better for that person that's eating that product as well.
Exactly.
I think it's really cool, you know, when we stand here and look at this and see, you know, a lot of times at the store, we get to just see the boxes come in, and we get to see Scott deliver them and talk to Scott for 5 minutes. But when you get to actually come here and see the product, like I said, I stopped the other day, but just at his retail shop, but you get to see actually the guys picking and everything happening. You know, it's pretty cool, and it's pretty neat to get out and see all the action, you know.
It's a busy place this time of year, and we're standing in the middle of a section. I can hear highway noise around us, but we're in the middle of farm country here. So it's a busy place. It's a happy place for me. I've been here a long time, and this is where everything that happens that you see at the store level, this is like the foundation of that. So this is what we're proud of.
And it's pretty cool. We just met like 3 over here. We met some pickers, and I think you said the one guy had been here 26 years?
My Spanish is pretty bad, but yeah, I think he said 25 or 26 years he's been picking apples here.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, you get people that are vested and want to, you know, be a part of it for that long. I mean, I think that speaks volumes for your organization you got here.
Right. And that's not a unique story. He's probably the longest tenured picker that we have, but we have several crew managers who have been here 15 to 20 years. So it's my grandpa always said, you take care of the people who take care of you first. And that's what we try to be a valued member of the community and make sure we take care of our employees and our stores too. That's important.
So another question that we get asked a lot at the store by either employees or customers is, you know, or I've even wondered myself, is an apple sitting on the tree and we see the pickers here today. That apple gets picked. What's the timeline like through step by step through the process, and what happens to the apple between here and when the customer gets to buy it and take it home?
Sure. Well, I think step one is starts before a picking crew even gets here, and we have to determine when the proper time to pick that apple is. And I think that's a big thing. You see a lot of fruit and apples in particular in the marketplace that somebody may have jumped the gun a little bit and picked a little bit early, or, you know, and that's one of those things that takes a lot of patience and a lot of experience. So we do a lot of sampling.
And how do you judge that?
There's a couple different ways. I think the most valuable way is experience, though. I mean, my dad's out in the orchard a lot, and he's been in this orchard for 45 years. So you rely on that experience. We do have a couple tests that we can use, whether it be an iodine test or to see where the starches are at in the apples and other things. A lot of it is it's actually taking a bite out of an apple and making sure that it's ready to go. So I think that's step one, and then after that we determine when we're bringing crews in. And when the crews come in, they'll go over. Well, the way I like to pick most of my varieties is in a 2-pick method. So we'll go over the first time and maybe take 40% of the fruit, roughly, depending on variety. It varies a little bit. So we'll take 40% of the fruit the first time over. They'll pick them into their picking bags. They'll dump their picking bags into our field bins, which hold about 20 bushels per bin. Most of our bin trailers carry 4 of those bins, which is 80 bushels per tractor load. That tractor load is then, after it's full, taken to our warehouse, where it comes into the warehouse to be processed. And during processing, then it goes through a washing period, a buffing period, a sizing period, and then it gets touched by another set of hands where it gets either bagged, depending on the size of the apple, or boxed and stickered for trays, which is what you would see in a bulk display at a Hy-Vee store. So once it's boxed or bagged, it gets palletized, and once it's palletized, it goes on to a truck and then delivered to the store. And honestly, like we talked about earlier, that can happen sometimes in 12 hours from when that first apple was put into a picking bag to put onto a truck and end up in a store floor, on the floor of a store, could be as soon as 12 hours sometimes.
Right.
Yep.
And especially in the beginning of the year, right? As you're trying to get some inventory built and get stuff in.
Right, and at the beginning of every variety. So every variety is ripened at a different time. And that's another misconception. That's what sometimes confuses people, is that they think when it's apple season, you should be able to buy all the apple varieties that you want to. You know, every variety has a specific zone which we're shooting for to have that variety ripen. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes the apple varieties are ripened in the same zone at the same time, and then you'll have both apples at the same time. But every variety at the beginning of its picking period is getting transitioned from the apple tree to the stores in a very short amount of time. And then as that season goes along and my inventory in the warehouse stacks up, then there's a little more lead time.
But everybody always wants the one that's not available, right?
Exactly.
That's how it works.
That's the name of my job, yeah.
So when they go through here, and you said they take 40% right away.
First time over, yep.
So that's for color? Is that what that's
Yep,
for?
so they're looking for color. We're looking for a certain, the apple tree is going to finish, depending on the variety. Every variety is a little bit different. But just say Honeycrisp, for example. If you can be patient enough to take 40% of the fruit the first time over, that fruit will be pretty consistent in how it's finished. And then you got to give that tree a little bit more time to finish the rest of the apples. Yep. And then we'll come back in about, depending on weather conditions, about 5 to 8 days, and then we'll get the rest of it the second time over.
So a lot of work.
A little bit of work, yeah.
A lot of work and going over everything a couple times at least, right?
Yep. But that's the thing about our crews. They've been doing this long enough. They know the routine. They take a lot of pride in their work.
Yep.
So they want to make sure that they're putting the right quality apple in those bins every day that they work. Right. And when they come back second time over and they get the rest of these apples, they take pride in the fact that they get all the apples, they did everything the right way, and they were careful with everything along the way. And that's important.
It's about all you can ask for.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that wraps it up. We'll get around and take some other pictures, maybe stop in some other places in the orchard and maybe chat a bit. But it was good to get out here and check out your farm. It's going to be good to show the people that buy your product who you are and where you're at and what you're all about. And I'm just glad we got over here today.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.